Hey everyone! Enneagram is the personality type system of the 9 types, which delves mostly into what I call the ego identities. So what the Enneagram essentially is, based on my understanding, is that it's how our egos construct an identity in order for our consciousness to be able to interact with the outside world. Actually, let me get the book that inspired me to say this. So I read it in German a long time ago, like, I don't know, it's almost 10 years ago now, so my recollection might not be perfect. My inspiration for calling it ego identities came from this book, which is totally unrelated to Enneagram. As I said, it's in German. In German it's called Der Ego-Tunnel, eine neue Philosophie des Selbst von der Hirnforschung zur Bewusstseinsethik by Thomas Metzinger. So what basically it's about the ego and a new philosophy of the self based on brain research. And this had like a big impact on me. And this is the basis of my understanding of the ego identities. So in this book, he goes into how basically having an ego and having a self, an I, is an adaptation. Okay, I'm not sure if it's really about evolution, but it looks as if we have evolved to create an ego that has a perceiving sense of consciousness in order to interact with the outside world, and that differentiates us also from the animals. So we humans, we have a sense of self, we have an ego or an identity, so that we can differentiate between other subjects and other objects. So there is the sense of I and you, and it's based on this ego, and I call it ego identity. And I think the Enneagram describes the 9 primary identities that we humans have or do adopt in order to have a consciousness and in order to, as I said, interact with the outside world, interact in such a way that, and also in combination with the instincts, our instincts and our instinctual drives get fulfilled. And you could say we propel the species forward or whatever. So this is kind of my philosophy behind calling the Enneagram types the ego identities. The 9 ego identities or the 9 Enneagram types, when you read the descriptions, it's usually the average or unhealthy version of the type. The more unhealthy someone is, the more they are like a cookie cutter type. You know, the more they're like the extreme version of the Enneagram type. Yeah, it's connected to survival, obviously. So it appears as if our mind or our instinctual self, so to speak, believes that they need to cling onto this ego in order to fulfill their needs, to get what they need, to be fully functioning and to be happy. So the unhealthier the person becomes, the more they cling onto this ego identity, the more they cling onto the issues, the, so to speak, sins and not the virtues in this case, but the sins or the problems and the very narrow worldview that each Enneagram type has. They cling on to it and they overly identify with it. It becomes who they are totally. And I think it's like a last desperate attempt at getting what the person instinctually needs. It's a survival mechanism, and it goes into overdrive when you're unhealthy. So when you are healthier, then naturally the need for this kind of ego identity starts to fade a bit. So the healthier you become, the harder it is to type you, basically. Like, usually the healthier someone is, oftentimes there's like a point. So I think around like level 3 or 2 of health, the personality type becomes more diffused and it's harder to say what is their actual personality type. But then when they're really healthy, actually, yes, they're going to embody the ideal version of their Enneagram type. But still, I would still say they're also not going to embody other traits that are more characteristic of the average or the unhealthy type 3, for example. So like they say for 3, the vice is deceit, right? And what that means is that you put out a certain image that you want others to see as successful or achievement focused and valuable in that way. But you when you're unhealthy, you're going to resort to lies and deceit. So a classic example is, I don't know, to lie about your age, to lie about how much money you make, to embellish the truth, to make yourself seem more more on top of your game, more successful than you truly are. This is like very typical of unhealthy 3. But if the 3 is healthy, they're not gonna do that anymore. They're gonna be truthful, like they're not gonna sugarcoat things. They're not gonna be deceitful in this manner, because there's no need to do that. And they're gonna help other people succeed, especially if they're 3 and 2. And yeah, they're going to be honest, and they're going to be hardworking, and just their attachment to that kind of image is going to be more, how you say, more loose, not more smooth, more loose. So they're also going to relax more. They're going to realize, okay, it's not just about achievement all the time, or success, or looking successful, having the fancy car, the fancy watch. It's not really all about that. It's also about actually being happy for myself, like this is when the 3 kind of, has like this mindset shift.